Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids' teachers, their librarians, their principal. And please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Ghana, Himalaya, wherever you find your podcasts. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Lucas and the Game of Chance, a thrilling middle grade novel written by Anthony L. Mena. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. While Lucas is playing his flute at the seawall one day, he befriends a mysterious talking dancing snake that rewards him with fortune and favor. Some years later, tempted by greed and pride, Lucas loses all of his riches and his family. He now must set off on a treacherous journey through a frightening forest filled with suspense and strange creatures. To find Destiny, her son, Ilion, the sun, her daughter, Luna, the moon. These celestial guardians will surely allow him to reverse his misfortune, restore his honor, and win back all that he loves and treasures. Won't they? This is a reimagined Greek folktale, Lucas in the Game of Chance. It's illuminated with dramatic and evocative pen and ink drawings that provide an ideal backdrop to the dark intrigue that fills this haunting story of human struggle, courage, and resilience. You and your kids are going to love it. Lucas and the Game of Chance by Anthony L. Mena. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Skipper, Friend or Foe, a distracting mystery within life's traumatic events. Written by Kelly Sanchez, it is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. As an educator and a mother, author Kelly Sanchez put her 20 years of experience working with kids into writing Skipper, Friend or Foe. This is a powerful coming-of-age middle-grade novel that you and your kids will absolutely love. It's going to launch some really important conversations within your family, and it's going to help kids who are going through tough times, letting them know that their feelings, whatever they are normal. You can get your copy today at Amazon. Skipper, Friend or Foe, a distracting mystery within life's traumatic events, written by Kelly Sanchez. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Join us right now from the beautiful city of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. Our guest is returning to the Reading with Your Kids podcast to celebrate his brand new picture book. It's called Boban from Saltan. Please welcome back to the show, Mike Purewall. Hey, Mike, how is it going?
Hey, Jed, I'm doing great. How about you? Thank you so much for having me again.
We're delighted to have you back on to celebrate this great new picture book. Tell us all about this person from Zoltan.
Yeah, so he's definitely one wise and witty wizard. He's actually telling kids how the world works and how the body works and nature, but not in the way you would think. He basically is saying how things work by showing how things don't work. Essentially, like when it rains, it's not like, he's dropping all dogs big and small, and he's dropping all these people. He's dropping, gooey goop from Mars. So he does it all in this very whimsical, rhyming way. And he goes through all these different scenarios, whether it be rain, whether it be nature, whether it be, the sun and moon. Imagine if the sun and moon were actually fighting instead of working together in perfect harmony. So certain things like that. And he goes all the way even to how the insides of our body works. Like if, for an example, if the colors change, and do our eyes actually change color with all the changing colors? No, they don't, obviously. So The end message is for children to really appreciate the little things in life, the gratitude in life for, having, the bodies that we have that work in perfect harmony with the universe, how the universe itself works every single day, how the sun rises and sets. And so it's really just an overall message of gratitude that hopefully makes kids laugh a lot while doing so.
Well, I love those two things, getting kids to laugh and also getting kids to think about living gratefully. It's beautiful. We've celebrated it here a lot on the podcast. It is amazing that we're living in a time where science has actually proven that living gratefully is a great benefit. There are so many benefits. You feel better. You are healthier. You're happier. You can endure pain longer. It's just crazy that this message that people have always kind of lived by. Live gratefully, be grateful for the things that you have. Now scientists have been able to show, this isn't just an old wives' tale. There's science behind it, and if you live gratefully, you're going to be a much happier person.
Yeah, absolutely. There's kind of a line that we use in our house is trying to have an attitude of gratitude. Like when you wake up in the morning and just quickly saying a few things that you're grateful for can really set your mind in a very positive mindset, and really helps for your day going forward to have a more positive, more fulfilling day. And I'm really, really hopeful that children's like will get this message from the book, and they can kind of appreciate those little things that are taken for granted. And you're absolutely right, like how science is going now with just being more positive or being more mindful, as an example, being more grateful in the day to day. How that actually intrinsically in your body actually makes you healthier as a person and naturally happier as a person. So You're 100% right that science has backed this up.
Yeah. You were sharing with me before we started recording that you've had the pleasure of going around and visiting a number of schools with your first book, On Your Way. Talk a little bit about that, going into schools and doing a presentation with kids. What does a school presentation from Mike Purewall look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually have a few stories for you, but to answer the question, you typically go in and read to like kindergartens, grade 1, 2s, and 3s. I'd be set up in the library, and you usually have the kindergarten classes come in, whether it be 3 or 4 classes, and I read them the story, and the same with grade 1, 2, and 3. The one cool thing that I try to do, or at least something different, is to show kids how the illustrations have come to life, and talk more about the publishing process, like how hard it is to get a publisher, the challenges of illustrations, and reiterating, all the different versions of illustrations that come through. So in a typical presentation, I would, show different versions of, say, an illustration or even the cover, and get kids to say, okay, this is what we changed here, this is what we changed there, and kind of talk to them about the whole process of, being an author, and also, working with the illustrator, and then asking kids, do they like to write more? Do they like to draw more? And potentially a future occupation for these children could be either a writer or an illustrator. And one of my favorite stories from going into schools was actually read at my daughter's school. And I'm not sure if you can recall, but my daughter was the main character in On Your Way. Mm-hmm. So when I was reading On Your Way at my daughter's school, I showed a picture of my daughter on my phone. I said, okay, kids, and this is all kindergarten through grade 3s. I'm like, this is my daughter, and can you see? This is my daughter in the book. And all these kids were just flabbergasted, like, oh my goodness, what, your daughter goes to school here? Like she was honestly the most popular kid in the school for that day. And I kind of had like almost like a Where's Waldo kind of challenge for lunchtime. Like, okay, kids, you have to find Bianca at lunch. And so all these kids at lunch that day were running up to Bianca saying, oh, were you in that book? Were you in that book? And she comes home and she goes, Daddy, is this what it's like to be famous, to have paparazzi? I'm like, yes, honey, this is kind of what it's like. So she found that very, very funny, but we kind of had like a Where's Waldo challenge for that day.
I'm curious, how long did it take for it to get old to your daughter to have kids running up to her and going, hey?
It only lasted a day or two. As you know, kids just move on to the next thing, right? So,
as I recall, the last time you were with us, you've had a very interesting life. You've had a number of careers right now. How is this current career going as a children's book author? Are you finding a lot of joy and fulfillment in it?
Yeah, definitely. Like I worked corporately for almost 20 years. I was in various sales and marketing roles in the CPG or consumer packaged goods industry, culminating as a vice president of sales. And I took some time off in the pandemic, and I just wanted to see, you know, kind of like figure out like what life's really about, trying to do things that are more passionate, a little bit more meaning and fulfillment. So I gravitated towards writing children's books. And I got to say, obviously financially, it's not the same as working corporate. There's a huge disconnect there. But in terms of rewarding and fulfillment and passion, you know, it's an absolutely fantastic thing. And, you know, no matter where these books go, I mean, I'm just so happy that, you know, I took the chance of, you know, doing something different, going on a different path. And honestly, I've learned so much more about myself, like doing, you know, taking a time out, taking a step back and going down this path and, you know, trying to help children and trying to relay positive messages to the world. You know, I'm really, really grateful for that. And I'm really, really thankful for having that opportunity.
Can you, and we might have talked about this the first time you were on, but I think it's really important, because I think there are a lot of people who, like you, found themselves in a job where they're very successful and the people that you're working with love you, and at some point you say, you know what? This is great on lots of levels, but it ain't great on every level, and I need to make a change. For so many people, that is terrifying because they're thinking, oh, what am I going to do about the bills? And I get this kid, and I got to, you know, here in the States, it's like $85,000 a year to send the kids to college now. Your kid is 7. What's it going to be like in 12 years? I mean, my head explodes. I can't take a lunch break, never mind change careers. Where did you find the courage to make that huge jump and take that risk?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I mean, I'm glad you used the word courage. There's a lot of other words to describe what I did, but we'll go with courage. And yeah, just like, you know, just something intrinsically inside of me that I needed to do something different. And, you know, I've gotten so much, you know, kudos for, you know, stepping out of my comfort zone and doing something different. And, you know, I tell myself not everything's permanent, right? Like, I mean, I'd love to establish myself as an author, and maybe that's something I can do on the side. And if I go back to, you know, work, corporately, then, you know, there's going to be opportunities there. So I like to tell myself that nothing is permanent in this world and change is always inevitable. So that's kind of one way that I kind of framed it in my mind. And, you know, two, you know, to talk about the bills and whatnot, because everyone has, even Canada, hey, we have lots of bills and very, very high taxes, much more than my American friends down south. You know, you can, you know, start side hustles, right? Like I've done a few side hustles to, you know, get that income to make sure I can keep on, doing what I love. And I think the most important thing is, you know, if you're married, you know, to have that, you know, plan in that conversation, lots of conversations. I have many, many conversations with my partner about how we're going to do this, how we planned it out, how I can take a step back from corporate units for a few years. And, you know, it's just really good to plan as well. So if anyone's out there thinking about doing this, I got to say has been the most rewarding and fulfilling thing I've done in my life. But it's also been the scariest too. You know, it's both. And some days you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing? And some days you're like, oh my God, this was the most amazing day ever. And I think it's good to get out of your comfort zone and learn more about yourself.
I love that notion of understanding that change is inevitable and it's a constant in our lives. I have very vivid memories of before I met my beautiful wife of not liking change, even on simple levels, you know, when the boss came in and said, we're not going to fill out this form this way, we're going to fill it out this way. And it's like a little tiny change and it would ruin my day. And so it was a big surprise to me a few years later with the support of my wife. I said, yeah, we're going to leave all that stuff in the past and I'm going to figure out a way to make a living as a professional clown and magician. And thankfully, like you said, with a lot of work, side hustles, and support, we made it happen. So yeah,
That's incredible. I mean, your story is in itself, right? I mean, you took so much courage just to do what you're doing now.
Well, it's, I was at a panel at Emerson College, and some kids, young students, everybody under the age of 100 is a kid to me. But, they asked, how did you do that? And, it was a lot easier because rent back then was, just a couple $100.
Right. Yeah.
Nowadays, yeah. I know in Toronto it's just as crazy as it is, here in Boston, where people are spending, 50, 60% of their monthly income on housing. That's just, it gets away from books, but it for a young person like you who has a young kid, that just must be a little bit overwhelming, just thinking about how expensive it is to live these days in these big, beautiful cities like Boston and Toronto and New York and Los Angeles.
Oh, 100%. I mean, take a look at cost of living and inflation, right? Just the inflationary pressures on everything from gas to groceries, even the basic necessities. It's very scary. And, I'm kind of wrapping my mind now as to, what my next endeavor is going to be, looking potentially back, at maybe a corporate role, or maybe, looking at maybe a nonprofit role, potentially something in sport, something that's a little bit more passionate to myself. But yeah, there's definitely those questions. And, my wife and I, we always check in with each other and seeing how we're doing. And I think obviously, having the support of your partner is critical on anything that you do. If you make such a major rash decision, I'm sorry, I wouldn't say rash. I mean, we planned this out it's a good 2, almost 3 years. We were planning this out for me to leave corporate. So, we have a window. I've done it. I've published my second book now. Really grateful for it. Really hopeful that, it takes off to some degree. If it doesn't, I'm totally fine with it. If it does, fantastic. But, I want to continue to push the books, on whatever my next journey is. And similar to you, Jed, I was very, 9 to 5, right? Just same routine, just resistant to change, for many years, for almost 20 years, just did the same, thing, cookie cutter thing over and over. And there's stability in that, right? There's familiarity in that. But on the flip side, there's, at least I'm talking from my perspective, there wasn't as much growth because you kind of just do the same things over and over again, which is fine, which if that's what some or most people want to do, that's fine. But I just reached a point in my life where I didn't want to look back, 20 years from now, that I didn't take a chance and didn't try to do something different with my life. And as I said, I'm very, very grateful that I did.
Yeah. Well, I know that there's loads of kids and families all around the world that are grateful that you've brought these great kids' books into the world. Do you ever sit down and take a moment to think about the fact that, hey, there's a family somewhere in the world right now that's cuddled up on the couch reading my book together?
It's a fantastic thought, right? I mean, I got to do it more, to be honest with you. I definitely have to do it more. But when I try to promote it and I give it to reviewers and things like that on Instagram or Facebook or whatnot, I get such nice messages back because, people love the rhyming scheme. It's fun for children to read it, but then there's also deeper messages that I've learned in life. Like Boban's all about gratitude. On Your Way is all about being imaginative and being courageous. These messages that I try to weave in the stories that I tell. And I've gotten so much feedback from, whether it be Instagram reviewers or, their children, that they love the books. And, I do sit back and sit in that moment, even if it's just for a moment, to say, hey, how cool is this? That, I was on this path before working corporately, and now people are writing reviews and they love the book. And, especially Boban from Zoltan, the first few reviews I have, one of the scenes is, Boban's talking about the sun and how he makes the sun rise and set, and he doesn't make the sun burp or fart all the time. Imagine the sun was burping and farting all the time, as an example. And so that one line, no matter what review I go to, kids absolutely love it. They're on the floor just howling and laughing. And that's just, that's priceless, right? To have that opportunity to make an impact on the child.
Yeah. Hey, talking about making kids laugh, I've noticed in the 35 plus years that I've been performing, kids' sense of humor has changed a bit. Have you noticed that with your book? And is it harder to get, well, you use the word fart, you can get a laugh out of a kid anytime, but have you noticed a change in the sense of humor of kids in the last few years?
I mean, I've noticed so many changes in kids in the last few years, especially from the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just, how difficult that was, not only for families, but especially for children. I think kids are just growing up so much faster, so quickly. And it's just, it's with the advent of technology, obviously. Like my daughter now, who is 8 years old, I can't get her off YouTube. It's unbelievable. And, there's kids in her class that have phones now. And there was a kid actually, in grade 2. She came home. She told me a classmate of hers watched Squid Games in grade 2. Ooh. So, I think kids are just growing up so much faster, and with social media and with like YouTube and like certain shows, I definitely think their sense of humor has changed. I think, they're almost growing up a little too fast and they can't be kids anymore. So hopefully with my books and my messages that, they can just take a step back and just enjoy being a kid and laughing again and, not having these worries or these problems as much. And I really think it's with the advent of technology, right? Just so much access to so many things, right at their fingertips.
Yeah.
And, I think that's an issue as a society as a whole, right? I mean, it's something that we're definitely going to have to deal with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons, it reinforces, I started the Reading with Your Kids podcast to just celebrate and remind parents that we are our kids' first and most important teachers, and that the time we spend reading with our kids before they're able to read and continue to read with them after the independent readers, that time is really invaluable and that kids love it. And there's so many benefits to reading with our kids. And one of them is just that we get them off YouTube for a little bit, and we're in charge of, or both of us, me and the kid, we're in charge of deciding what we're going to talk about, what kind of media we're going to experience. So, thanks to you and to all the other authors out there for creating great books that we can sit down and read with our kids and talk with our kids about. So, yeah.
I just wanted to say, just on that point, there was, like my daughter who's now 8, she's really gotten into Harry Potter now, and she is a bookworm. So we have a rule in our house where there's no screens allowed during the week. So on weekends, we're a lot more liberal, but during the week, like, she comes home, she does her work. We get her involved in activities. She's in basketball. She's in karate. But we have a no screen rule during the week. And since we've been reading with her since she was ever just a small little kid up to now, like she's going through these Harry Potter books. Like it's honestly, it's insane how quickly she's reading and how good her vocabulary has become and just spelling and just everything. So, it is, to your point, absolutely critical to start children when they're younger. What you're doing is absolutely fantastic from a podcast perspective, just spreading that message, teaching adults, I'm really proud of you, Jed, for what you've done and what you've accomplished and the messages that you're sending out to the world.
Well, Mike, you read that perfectly. That was exactly what I sent you on the script to say. So thank you for that. Right now, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Boban from Saltan.
Yeah, so it's available online. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. In Canada, it's on Indigo. In the UK, Waterstone. So anywhere on any online major site will definitely have the book for purchase.
Wonderful. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Boban from Saltan. Great new picture book from our guest, Mike Purewall. Hey, Mike, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you again, Jed. Hope to do this again soon.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We are so grateful that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. We'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. If you are on LinkedIn, please connect with Jed Doherty. We also have a Reading with Your Kids page on LinkedIn. We would love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Authors, click on the Authors Click Here button to find out how you can be a guest here on the show and find out how we can help you celebrate your book with the world. And also, parents, please be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com to download our free online magazine. Hey, we want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our amazing guests. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Ann O'Leary, Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.